More than 10% of residents at a Marshall County nursing home have tested positive for COVID-19. Our Sydney Stallworth tells us what steps they're taking to protect the people who live there.
The elderly population is at a heightened risk for complications due to COVID-19, so you could only imagine the shock when not 1 or 2, but 8 residents at this Marshall County nursing home tested positive.
You have to be hyper vigilant.
Branchwater Village is an assisted and independent elderly living facility in Boaz. The discovery of the first resident with COVID-19 came as a surprise. It all started when one resident fell and had a hip injury.
Where they were going to be sent for rehab requires they get tested. And so when they got tested, it came back positive for COVID. So they were isolated and they notified us.
Then another resident had a health scare.
His pulse ox was low. It went down. So we then notified the family and the doctor and admitted him to the hospital where he tested positive.
All the residents have since been tested. Now 8 of the 43 residents have COVID-19. We're told all are asymptomatic. Officials say they're taking extra precautions to keep everyone safe.
The staff is completely trained on the PPEs and they're wearing mask gowns, gloves, and making sure that we have a fresh change of clothes for when they come into work. They're kept on the facility, so they're washed there, so they're not bringing something in.
Residents and staff are checked multiple times a day for temperature and other vitals, and we're told they've already deep cleaned the facility.
Now we're just trying to add an outside company to come in with a full hazmat and clean it.
And even with all the changes, staff are finding a way to keep spirits high.
The staff has been doing things like hallway bingo, letting the bingo do it, but they do it at their door and they set it up. So they have games and things that they play and try to keep them entertained.
The infected patients are hospitalized. They have not yet set a date for when they'll return. Putting the Valley first, Sydney Stallworth, WZDX News.